The author Blake Crouch holds a really special place in my heart and also in the history of this channel. There was a time in my life where I really put reading on the back burner and I didn't really read a lot of books. And when I wanted to get back into books, it was Blake Crouch's trilogy, Wayward Pines, that hooked me back into the world of reading fiction again. His ability to write super fast page-turner thrillers is sort of unrivaled in my opinion, and every book that I've read that he's written has really appealed to me for different reasons. Moving on from the Wayward Pines trilogy, one of his most well-known books is Dark Matter. And Dark Matter, while having a somewhat predictable plot that takes a few interesting and fun twists and turns, it is the equivalent of an awesome blockbuster movie. And in a really awesome twist, it was announced that Dark Matter was going to be adapted for Apple TV into a television series, and I'm excited for him. But Dark Matter really mostly focuses on a really cool science fiction idea, and then it extrapolates that into turning it into a super cool thriller plot. That is to say, it doesn't have a lot of things to say necessarily, but it is a fun journey to ride. Moving forward into Blake Crouch's next standalone novel, Recursion, Blake Crouch once again takes a lot of modern technological advancing ideas that are being discussed right now, including like quantum physics and the importance of memories, and he places that story in a really emotional context that I loved absolutely. One of my early videos on the channel was actually a review for the book Recursion, and I will link that up here, and I focus a lot on the emotional impact, on the way that he plays with this emotional concept using this science fiction backdrop to tell a story that once again is just epic, blockbuster, huge scale, but it has this underlying heart. But once again, it mostly is a book that isn't focused on the message, it's focused on telling a really cool plot that happens to have emotional resonance. Blake Crouch's newest novel, Upgrade, that just recently released, shows him taking a little bit of a different direction, mostly with just the focus on how the story is presented. Here we have Crouch exploring the potentialities of a very current popular trend in science to talk about, which is one of gene editing and the potential massive impacts it could have on humanity as a whole. And it's within this backdrop that we see Crouch try to attempt something a lot more ambitious in some ways than his previous novels. I think this book could be received very differently depending on what you like about Blake Crouch's books, if you've ever read them before, or if you're coming to him as a new author. As always, Crouch presents this story in the backdrop of a science fiction thriller that is super fast-paced. It's a real page-turner. You're going to want to know what happens next. But in addition to this thriller backdrop, he really tries to get into the classic science fiction realm of philosophizing a lot about the human condition. And it's within this backdrop that the juxtaposition between crazy, fast, enjoyable popcorn science fiction thriller is set against a more classic science fiction philosophy exploration of a lot of relevant and modern themes. The genuine passion with which Crouch uses to approach these themes and explore these themes is remarkable. It is heart-affecting in many ways. And in his passion, there's not a lot of nuance going on. The themes of the story are really heavy-handed, so much so that this book sometimes is speaking directly to the reader in a way that can feel a little bit preachy, but instead of doing it in a way that's just looking down from a high tower, yelling at everyone, saying everything is wrong and this is why and here's how we fix it, the really earnest and humble way that Crouch tries to get his thoughts across in this book feel genuine. They feel heartfelt, and some of that comes across in amazing ways. There's some really good execution of not just this judgmental bash against the ideas that are prevalent that may stand against what he's talking about. He really seems to care about the subject matter of this book, and he wants to approach it in a way that is inclusive in trying to find a solution, at trying to band together and work towards a greater future. In the light of today's cultural context seeming really algorithm focused at dividing people into super tribalism, like I said, it just feels really heartfelt. It feels like it's something that he really cares about, and he feels like he wants to share his message with the world in a way that is really heavy-handed, but not obnoxiously so. The difficulty of executing this concept in the context of a science fiction thriller, however, can be a little bit of a struggle, where I think the emphasis of the theme in the story and the book as a whole is very much reflected in the pacing of the book, the events that happen within the book, in ways that hurt the attempt to also make it that popcorn science fiction crazy fast-paced thriller. And so when I'm reviewing this book, I'm left of two minds when it comes to how to talk about it. Previously, Blake Crouch books have been used to tell a really fun, action, fast-paced story that also happens to have elements of heart. And they can spawn really interesting discussions in the setting of this super crazy story. But because the focus of that story was to make it a really good science fiction thriller, sometimes throwing those elements in didn't always work for everyone. This book is more the opposite direction. direction, where he is trying to get across a message or get across a philosophical idea in so strongly a way that the cohesiveness of the theme throughout the book sometimes drastically hurts what might normally have drawn a Blake Crouch reader to care about his books. In other words, the message and the theme of the book are so prevalent that it takes away from the elements that might normally draw someone to read a Blake Crouch book. And this includes me, who has loved all of his books for what they've been in the past. So without going into spoilers, for every praise I could give the way that he handles this theme and the fact that it is so prevalent throughout the book, these would be cons towards making it a science fiction thriller that has pacing problems or plotting problems that make it a little bit not as great as his past work. On the flip side, however, his new emphasis, I think, is sometimes dragged down by the parts of the book where he's really trying to continue to have elements of the fast-paced science fiction thriller story. The story beats in Upgrade are super predictable, like even more so than his previous books, where sometimes he would take criticism in Recursion for taking a popular and commonly explored science fiction idea and then just like playing with the familiar in a new fun way. This does less of that, though it presents like it's trying to do the same thing. But like I said, it's even more predictable. You can tell exactly where the story is going at every single beat. And when things are revealed, they don't feel like they are twists as much as naturally where the story would go in a way that is enjoyable, but not revolutionary in any way. And the way that these two parts of the book are sort of always conflicting make this one a tough one for me to talk about. Even within my own internal thoughts about the book, I'm conflicted on whether some parts I love or some parts I sort of get annoyed by, because depending on what pair of glasses and what hat I'm wearing when I think about critically analyzing this book, I come across with very different conclusions on how well it executed those pieces. And his attempt at this book to try to straddle the line between those two worlds, I don't know if it's actually a pro. All this being said, I think Upgrade is a great book. Even with all of these struggles, I really enjoyed my time with it. I think it's going to stick with me, and I'm going to be thinking about those themes for a long time to come. But the more I analyze the book and think about where it lies in my Blake Crouch canon inside of my own personal thoughts about it, it's just a lot more of a mixed bag than my previous experiences reading Blake Crouch. It's fast-paced, it's thought-provoking, it feels important, it feels relevant, but it also feels like it's a little bit internally at war with itself, which in some ways supports the theming. But it has decided to place itself in a camp between two types of stories that it wants to tell, and it's always like weirdly balanced between them. There is some really, really, really good stuff in this book. There's a lot of fun to be had here. Please let me know in the comments down below if you were thinking about checking this one out, or if you've read it or have read any of Blake Crouch's previous works. Please let me know your thoughts as well. If you like this review, please remember to give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see me review more books in the future, please consider subscribing to the channel. I appreciate it so much. I hope to see you again soon in another video. Thank you. Goodbye.
No one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep. No one ever get enough. If I don't show up, I might get fired. Sleep. No one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep. No one ever get enough. If I don't show up, I might get fired.